Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Marketing Profs webinar. I'm George B. Thomas, speaker, trainer, catalyst, and more importantly, I'll be your moderator for today's educational event. Thanks for being here with us today. We appreciate you and the time that you're spending here with us today. Now, before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to go over, so here we go. If you lose audio or visual, simply exit Zoom and come back to reset your connection. The chat feature is available to you at the bottom of your screen and should only be used for general comments because you can ask your questions or send those comments in with the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen as you think of them. Now, we'll hear from Shira and then we'll go into our Q&A session and we'll answer as many questions as we can with the time remaining. Now, I'd like to take a minute to thank ZoomInfo for sponsoring today's broadcast. ZoomInfo is a leader in modern go-to-market software, data, and intelligence for more than 25,000 companies worldwide. ZoomInfo empowers sales, marketing, and recruiting professionals to hit their numbers by pairing best-in-class technology with unrivaled depth of company and contact information. Want to learn more? Well, then visit zoominfo.com/solutions/marketing to sign up for a demo to discover how you can find, acquire, and grow customers faster by using an integrated sales and marketing ABM platform. We'll also drop that link in the chat pane for you to grab and use at a later date after this educational webinar. All right, attendees, I'm excited to introduce Shira Abel. Shira Abel has 25 plus years of experience leading strategic marketing companies, generating over 300 million in pipeline. She has worked with many scale-ups on their brand messaging to land enterprise clients, and she has helped drive change management at several enterprises. All right, you're here for the who, the what, the when, the why of intent data. Shira, are you ready to rock and roll?
I absolutely am. Thank you so much for having me. And this is an absolute honor. Today, we're talking about intent data. Data. I'm probably going to be saying it a million different ways during this webinar, so just bear with me. But you get the point of what it is. We're talking about it because this is going to be more and more important as everything is changing so rapidly right now in terms of what we're going to be allowed to do soon. And you'll find out more about that and how people are getting their information. So intent, it's all happening and it goes on with you or without you. A little bit more about me. I'm the founder and CEO of Hunter & Bard. We're a B2B marketing agency that offers marketing team as a service, ABM programs. We do content marketing from sales enablement materials to sales decks to case studies, branding, website messaging, and website design, all of this. And website development. I'm a lecturer about marketing and startups at Berkeley in the School of Engineering under the major of entrepreneurship. And I have a podcast, ABM Insider. So if you are interested in listening or perhaps being on the podcast, if you actually do ABM, would love to talk to you. I'm open to connecting. Just send me a note on LinkedIn. Okay, today we're going to be talking about what is intent data, why it matters, the macroeconomics of everything and how that ends up affecting how we read the signals. And then, of course, ABM and intent and different platforms that are out there. Now, I know this slide is in like every deck, all right? When you're talking about ABM, or you're talking about the sales cycle, or you're talking about the customer journey, it is not a straight line. It's a bit of a mess, actually. And that's totally fine. The thing to keep in mind about this is all of the teal boxes here are different forms of intent data that you can get. If they downloaded some content, if they went to your website, this is all intent data, and you can see where it is in the cycle and the journey according to where it is lined up from the navy in the middle. So why does that matter? Well, because now 76% People are 76% of the way through their journey, their buying journey, before they ever engage with the salesperson. We already know the statistic of there being 60% of the way through before they get to your website. So they're 76% of the way through before they get to talk to somebody. You need to catch them. You need to catch them early. You need to be able to get them the information they need. You need to figure out what it is they're looking for. And you're only getting that with intent data, because none of us have a magic crystal ball to be able to tell us this is what they're looking for. So there are other changes also in the market, as I mentioned earlier. AI, ChatGPT, Bard, all of this, people are doing their research inside of chat and not necessarily going to your website. They may be finding everything somewhere else. And as that's going to happen more and more, and your website traffic will be less and less, theoretically, this is what the industry is saying, that's going to end up affecting what you know. And they're only going to come to your website when they're finally ready. Either they're ready to buy or they're ready to talk. Another thing that's changing, Google is putting in stricter rules on email. So from the last I read, it was going to be 5,000 per day max per domain. What does that mean? That means if you're an enterprise and you're going to be sending out emails, 5,000 per domain, that's not a lot. So that's these rules going into place. They're probably going to be also mirrored by Microsoft. These type of things that happen end up changing. Who are you sending your emails to? Spray and pray won't work. You're going to have to get 1 million subdomains, and Google's not selling 1 million subdomains anymore. They're blocking people, they're blocking companies from buying them. So if that's the case, intent data is going to become, from all around, third-party data is going to become even more important as first-party data becomes less and less. Oh, and by the way, I can see both the questions and the webinar chat. So if you have a question while I'm talking, feel free to throw it in there. I'll be watching it to be able to answer your questions in real time. All right, so now, what is intent data and what are your prospects up to? I mentioned before, first party and third party. Both of those together encompass intent data. These are the signals given by buyers that show that they're either looking for a solution or doing some sort of research. They may not be even deciding that this is something they need to solve yet. They could just be looking and reading about something because they're interested. And it's up to us to understand by what we're seeing how to respond to it, right? Okay. Now, there's different levels of data. There's account level intent and contact level intent. What's the difference? Account level intent is when you see somebody from this company has come to your website. You don't know exactly who it is. You may know the location they're at, but you can see that this company has been going and doing actions. So you could see this company has looked at an ad, or this company has come to your website, and marketers can take that information and use it to put more ads towards people at that company, show them more, do more programs towards them. So you could see all of that. And then, but when it comes down to sales, sales needs to contact someone. And to be able to contact someone, they need contact level data. So who is it that went? Now, keep in mind, if you're doing a one-to-one ABM program, marketing will also need the contact level data. Now, how do you get that? You build a list. You figure out from the account level data, what accounts are looking at you. Build a list of the ICP in the actual account. Let's say you are selling to Dell. and you want to find product marketers at Dell to sell to. You're going to build a list of product marketers at Dell. You see that Dell has looked at an ad. You see that they've gone to your website. You don't know exactly necessarily who it is. That's a typical account level intent. So then you go and build a list of product marketers who you typically sell to at Dell, and you build that list. This would be how you go from account level intent to contact level intent. And then there's a difference between an intent and an indicator, which is also super important to know. So intent is the action, right? Well, there's an action with an indicator as well, but it's not necessarily an action that involves your industry, company, or platform. If somebody's moving jobs, that's an indicator that they may be open to changing the tools that they have at the current place. If they used your tools at a previous place and they've moved, most likely, if they loved your tool, they're going to take your tool with them. That would be an indicator of a prospect, not necessarily, but you don't actually know this is what they're going to do. So that's an indicator instead of intent. I would actually argue that an indicator is even more powerful, depending on what the indicator is. Unless, of course, your intent is a hand raise, and that's the most powerful you've got. Now, macroeconomics and intent. Our current economic conditions in tech specifically, this has been quite the year. And one thing to keep in mind, and the caveat of all of this, is that, well, one thing before I even get started on the macroeconomics is that you cannot create intent where there is none. Somebody's not interested, they're not interested. And the current economic conditions are changing interest, because with rising interest rates, funding is more expensive. With funding being more expensive, you get companies getting less rounds raised, okay? And if they're raising less money, that means that they have to focus on profitability and their run rate. If they're focusing on profitability and their run rate, they're likely laying off marketing and sales. If they are laying off marketing and sales, they don't need as many seats of sales tech, MarTech, whatever. That trickles down the line, and that changes. Well, if they're taking less of this, they need less of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That would be the bad news of the macroeconomics. However, there is some good news. There's always a silver lining. And that would be that the top companies in a downturn actually use a downturn as an opportunity. And that opportunity is growth. It's a great time to invest in infrastructure enhancement, and customer retention is even more critical. Intent data also gives you the information of, is your customer looking somewhere else? Don't just pay mind to this when it's time to sign back up again, right? When you're looking to get them for another year. You have to watch this the entire way through, because that's a signal. So intent data will tell you if companies are looking to buy in your general direction. These companies that buy during downturn, they're more likely to be strong clients, as they're only spending money if there's a real need. So they're going to work with you to make sure that you're more successful and that you're both successful. And the other thing to keep in mind is that most of the top companies in the world were started during downturns. So look to see from the startups what's coming out that's the most interesting, and make sure, it's not all bad. Okay, now, how do you read intent signals? And are you set up to react quickly enough? I mentioned first-party and third-party data previously. So let's get into it. First party, you've got website visits, page views, scroll speed. Are they reading everything on your page? How long are they spending on your page? Do you have a plugin on your website that gives you this information. Are they filling out any forms? Who's filling them out? Are your emails getting opened? Are they getting click-throughs, right? Is there any type of social media engagement? Is your social media set up to have engagement? And then, of course, content downloads. Content, according to Gartner, content is the #1 click-through for in terms of offers. So there's all these different things that you could be doing that give you first-party data. Third-party data is, of course, keyword analysis, right? What are they searching for? Are they visiting industry publications? You're only getting this if, of course, you get the information from the industry publication, right? Because it's third-party data. Third-party data is somebody else's first-party data. So you're looking to see if they've researched a competitor. Are you getting mentioned on message boards? Dark social, you're not getting that data. That's private Slack boards. That's messaging your friends to find out, what did you do for this? But on the other hand, you've got G2 and Trust Radius. So if somebody's doing their research and you take one of those platforms, you can find out this company is researching you. And then, as I mentioned before, there are indicative data, which is demographic data changes, which are indicators and not intent, but they're used the same way. Now, what signals matter? Sometimes a signal is just a signal, and it doesn't actually mean much. So, example, if somebody's just read a blog post on something from your website, that doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to buy. It means they read a blog post on your website on a particular subject. If you see this company come back and read more, well, now you have an idea of what they're interested in, and you could be serving them ads to that effect. If they keep coming back and look at different pages of your website, that's a signal of intent. If they're reading all of your technical materials, that's a strong indicator of intent. That means they're really taking you seriously, and you should be reaching out to them. So that would be an example of derived intent. Known intent would be doing a survey, reaching out to those in your industry to see what they're doing, what they're interested in, or prospects. Company priorities that are listed on an annual or quarterly report. If you're reaching out to public enterprises, you could get this information. It's all out there. Any type of company announcements, projects, products, plans. And then, of course, if there are things like layoffs or hiring or building out a new division or closing an area, the work still has to be done. Somebody's going to be doing it. So there's always something there to be selling. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, you've got the champion indicators. And champion indicators are things like people moving companies. A new hire. New hires often bring, let's say it's an executive. How many times have we seen executive new hires figure out who the best people on their team is, and anybody that's not absolute top gets let out, and they pull in the people that they've worked with previously. This happens again and again and again. People like to work with their empire. So that would be an indicator. And with that, they like the tools that they like. If you have a preference for Zoom Info above another platform, and you move over to a company and the other platform is up for renewal, you could switch over really easily to Zoom Info. That is an indicator. Then, of course, you could go through and figure out, all right, what exactly is going on with my ads? Let's say you've got a high account click-through rate, right? But you've got a low individual click-through rate, which would be below 0.5. A low individual click-through rate, but a high account click-through rate generally means that the account has interest, but you're aiming it either towards the wrong people or too wide, and it doesn't have enough of a pull, and you need to reevaluate your audience and maybe also reevaluate your message towards the audience that you're sending it out to that's wide. Maybe you need to narrow that audience. Low account rate, click-through rate, and low individual click-through rate. It's either messaging is off, the industry isn't interested, or it's the wrong placement, publication, or platform. So then you would be reviewing your segmentation, testing new messaging, testing placement. My recommendation when it comes to testing is test 3 times. So when you test 3 times, you test, all right, I have tried this message. This message didn't work. Let's test a different message, test a 3rd message. And while you're testing messaging, also test imagery and see if maybe that's what's not working. Is your imagery focused enough on the industry to be able to pull them in? And then, of course, are there any trends? So who is responding and who is not responding? There's no point in putting your time, money, and effort into an industry that has no interest, right? So you could test it, like maybe you test it once a year. Has anything changed? And if nothing has, you go on to the next thing. But otherwise, look at title. Who's responding? Company size, industry, messaging, imagery that performs better. And again, as I said before, who isn't reacting? Don't put your time into a group that isn't interested. Now, there are, of course, really important things to keep in mind. Sales and marketing must work together. I know everyone says this. I'm going to say it again. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to say it many more times in this webinar. And this webinar is only 30 minutes. So sales is not going to spend their days inside any tool. Marketing's got to keep watch and send those accounts over when signals warrant action. Okay. That means marketing and sales has to have a good relationship, because if marketing is sending something over, sales needs to act on it. And if there's no good relationship there, marketing will send it over, sales will wait. That takes you over to time. Prospects do not get better with age. So if you see somebody taking action now, you have to take action now. The sooner you take action and the closer to the time of their action, the better. Multiple actions closer together, that is a stronger signal. If they are doing multiple visits to the website, if they're reading everything, if they're downloading all the white papers and looking at the case studies and doing all the things, call them. Yes, call. And stay alert. Don't stop tracking intent just because the prospect becomes a client. Watch and see what they do, okay? Churn happens when you ignore signals. Pay attention. Then what do you do with the data? Well, you find the buying committee. And from there, you identify who's interested, see what matters to them, build targeted lists. You could do lead scoring and prioritization. Who is more likely in this group to be interested? Why? And then, of course, if it's happening from a customer, retention. You can create a flow, and this is just an example flow, but you could create a flow that you could share with the entire team so that they can understand who's doing what. And you can build this out even further, showing who owns what part of the funnel it is, all of that. This can be done. This is a simple version, but you can put this in order to get share with the team, in order to align everyone and bring everyone together so that they all understand how everyone needs to work together to get the closed win. Now, ABM and intent. Are your strategic accounts more of a wish list? These are the ones that we're after because these are the ones we like the most. These are the ones we think we can help the most. Or are you grabbing them and saying, oh, these are the ones we're seeing that are kind of on our wish list, but also are showing intent signals. Let's put time and effort into this group. So intent data turns it into a target list rather than a wish list. And again, as I mentioned, 2 minutes before, ABM only works when sales and marketing work together. So these are caveats. Email marketing is changing. Outbound, that's going to be changing a lot over the next year. Firewalls with emails and ad blockers give misinformation. And this will probably become even more with time. So platforms are changing in order to deal with this. But the fact is, there's a lot of things out there, and you have to have intent data from multiple sources, which is my point. To see, okay, well, I'm not just seeing things here, I'm seeing things here and here. This is real. Let's take it. And that would be how we work to get all this together. Hold on, just, oh, that's not to come up. Okay. Now, where intent fits in the scale ABM framework. What are the new rules going into effect February 2024? I'll do this and then I'll get to that questions. Okay. The scale ABM framework, I've already done a webinar for this inside of MarketingProfs. You can find this inside of the membership. Inside of the membership, you could see my old scale, or it's not old, the other video for the scale ABM framework. There's also an ungated ebook on the Hunter and Bard website if you want to learn more about the scale framework. But it's, you know, securing ABM goals. So really quickly, what's your goal? Make sure it's a SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And make sure that everyone, sales and marketing, are aligned. Interview sales and customer success to understand who the target accounts should be. Build the account list, get confirmation, and then build the contact level list. Plan the program from the goal to the strategic initiatives to the tactics. That's advancing targeting tactics. And make sure that the team understands the messaging and why each tactic is being used. Of course, lead a seamless campaign journey. Implement the actual program, be it ads, emails, small events, webinars, whatever. And then, of course, as always, at the end of a program, evaluate your progress and measure results. How did you do? Did you hit your goal? And what could have been done better? Now, as to Leslie, what are the new rules going into effect in February 2024? Those would be Google changing the amount of emails that can be sent out. And the amount of emails that can be sent out, if I remember correctly, is 5,000 per domain per day. So that's fine if like you're a 5-person startup. That's a lot more complex if you're a larger organization. So, yes, thank you, Kim, for putting that in there. What types of monetary incentives can generate useful signals, anything beyond coupons and discounts? Okay, so monetary incentives. I have a whole theory and bunch of opinions on that. My opinion is your evangelists are not financially motivated. And your evangelists are going to be the best people to be talking about your product. So I wouldn't make them necessarily a monetary incentive. You can make them related to your product and you can make them a gift. A great example of that is Fisker Scissors. You can find that case study online, but Fisker Scissors had the Fisker Hats or something, and they created this entire program for these women who sew and use Fisker Scissors, and it was a whole thing. So my recommendation is to turn it into what I refer to as a t-shirt economy. And I refer to it as that because, I'm going off, but I'm just going to keep going off subject. So Google did a test on when projects were going to be done. And this was a case study from my MBA days. And in this test, if you did really well and guessed the right completion date of the program or product, you got both a t-shirt and money. Now, these are Google engineers. They didn't need the money. But when they didn't get the t-shirt, they were pissed. And they were like, where's my t-shirt? I want my t-shirt. Why? Because they wanted to show off that they knew something that somebody else didn't, right? They want to show off their expertise. This is the reason why people put their information onto Wikipedia, right? So what you want to do is not have monetary incentives, but give incentives of, well, ego, of helping somebody feel good about themselves because they're propping up what you've got and they're showing people how much they know. That's more that's going to not only get you more in terms of the, what's the word? Reciprocity. That's going to get you more in terms of reciprocity, and it's going to get you a stronger customer base and a more trustworthy customer base. So I wouldn't necessarily go after monetary incentives. Going back to the scale framework, choose the build list, right? This is where you're going to find intent data. So you've got, this is where intent data lies inside of the scale framework. When you're choosing build list, you're grabbing your old intent data or previous intent data to say, all right, this is what we've seen previously that's worked. Let's take that information and use it to build our segmented lists, right? And then, of course, if you're going to be going advanced and reverse engineer your closed platinum wins, right? Who are your top accounts? What did they do when they were going along and were choosing your solution over somebody else's? What worked with them? What was the messaging? So you could use this in order to create your lead scoring and requirements for a future list. See previous intent data to inform future decisions. And then, of course, evaluate, check the details. What was the sales accepted accounts? How many were opened, unopened? This was a one-to-one program. And so this was how many actually went to close wins out of those sales accepted accounts. From this particular one, I think all of them closed. So then you go through and you evaluate. You look for trends and you decide next steps. So what trends are you seeing? That's also intent data. If you're seeing managers in one group from Fortune 750 to 500 and directors at 1,750 size companies, then you know to aim for this title at this size and this title at this size. These are things that you can do in order to figure out how are we going to be going forward. And as I mentioned before, if an industry doesn't respond, don't sell to them. And then, of course, intent data will end up informing, your metrics. What your metrics are will inform your intent data. Reverse that. So pipeline growth, revenue growth, engagement, ROI and investment, all of these, see what happened here to be able to decide what you're going to do going forward. And then, of course, platforms. There are so many. And in terms of ABM and the Magic Quadrant, you can see that ZoomInfo is at the top of the visionaries and a leader. And then basically you've got 6 Sense, Demandbase, and ZoomInfo. But some others that are up and coming are Apollo, Follows, Path Factory, and HubSpot. Thank you. And I am looking forward to getting all of your questions.
All right, now's the time. And Shira, if you want to actually in about, oh, never mind. Go ahead and stop sharing. First of all, thanks for the great presentation. Attendees, now is the time to go ahead and get those questions in. We are going to go ahead and start with some that we have. And again, as you put them in the Q&A or in the chat feature, I will look at them and we will go from there. So,
George, are you good with me answering them as I see them? Oh, I can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yep. So you can, or we'll start with one here and then we'll just go from there. Again, if people put them in the chat pane, but let's start with this one. Can intent signals expire or go stale, Shira?
So intent signals, like I said before, that prospects don't get better with age. If you saw an intent signal 6 months ago, I would check in, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean most likely a decision has been made or the intent was just simply research. It depends on what the intent signal is. And you have to take it from there.
Okay. And then Joyce earlier asked, what types of monetary incentives can generate useful signals? Anything beyond coupons or discounts?
Right.
Thoughts there?
I saw that in the middle, and I did give some information on that during the actual presentation. So more thoughts on that. So you've got coupons, you've got things, but then you could also do, it sounds to me like you've got more of a B2C product and you're looking for intent signals that way. What are you offering that also will provide you with intent signals, right? So let's say your slowest day of the week in your store is Tuesday. You could offer some type of incentive to come in on Tuesday in your social. If more people come in on Tuesday, you see that your social is working. So it's also a matter of, are you using things in order to bring you more intent signals?
Nice. Leslie actually brings up, you mentioned recommending Clearbit with HubSpot integration. Is this going to be a free offering for HubSpot CRM clients? I've used it in the past and it's super well anyway. Is it going to be free for clients? I'm sure it'll change, by the way. And if people haven't Googled the acquisition. Anyway, Shira, what are your thoughts?
I don't work for HubSpot and I don't work for Clearbit, so I can't actually give you that information. But my guess is, considering how, well, HubSpot's got a really easy UX. So I would guess that, and I use Clearbit. I used Clearbit before the acquisition. I actually found it, maybe you used an earlier version. The current version of it is pretty simple and straightforward. I think that it will probably stay easy and straightforward. I've used Lead Feeder too. That, you know, I found Clear. I have a personal preference, but my personal preference is irrelevant on this webinar.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've got another one. And remember, attendees, you can hit the Q&A panel or the chat panel with your questions. But Shira, how can I use intent data for account-based advertising?
So, okay, account data for account-based advertising, you've got so many different ways. One, it's your segmentation. Two, it's what you're going to do afterwards. Once you see click-throughs, you can do offers, form fills, all of this. Go after them. You see a company, if you see multiple people from a company clicking on an ad, even if they don't do a form fill, go after them. Any type of action is showing interest, especially if it's an ad, because people generally, they're not going to interact with an ad. So if they're clicking on it, there's interest, even if they're not doing anything. One click is not, 20 clicks definitely is. Somewhere in the middle, yeah, there's definitely more interest. One click could simply be a mistake on a page. So keep that in mind.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and go with this one. Is intent data helpful when remarketing to cold leads?
Yes, 100% yes. So you can see what they did previously and where their interests were. That can tell you what type of messaging to be able to send over to them, and that can help get you in their purview. That shows you their interests. That was their previous interest. You could also look to see what their previous interest was. And let's say you've got a platform that you're selling. You can look to see if they're using a competitive platform, because there are programs out there that show this information online, depending on what kind of offering and product you have. And you can see, like, there's just all of this different research that you could be doing in order to get that in front of you. So yeah, you can use the past stuff to be able to inform your future decisions. Casey has a couple of questions here. Do you mind if I go after them?
I'll go for it.
Okay, first one, looking at how to sell velocity to the sales team, marketing lead here. Well, my recommendation whenever you're selling anything to the sales team is to find one person on the team who is a friendly, meaning they're nice and easy to work with and open to working with marketing. And then you do a pilot with them. When you have success with that pilot, you turn that into a process and you find another person on the sales team who is friendly. And then once you've got 2 and 3, the rest of the sales team will follow, because once they're seeing success, they're more likely to do it. But there are those who won't do it just because they won't do it. And there is no point in pushing up against a wall that will not budge. This happens. The other question she has, how can intent data drive velocity? So intent data can drive velocity by showing you, well, going back to the Gartner slide, right? Where they are in there, and then getting them the information that they seem to be looking for. You can see from the intent data what they should be talking about, right? Well, that helps your sales team. They looked at this, talk to them about this, this, and this. it informs the conversation of the sales team so that they're not offering them everything. They're offering the thing that will solve their problem. And you can see what their problem is by the intent data. Does that help?
Nice. Very cool. Ashley also asks, Shira, we use Zoom Info. Is that similar to Clearbit?
Yeah. Yeah, Zoom Info is great.
All right. And I'm trying to see if Andy's is a question. Are your friends in this? Oh, it's just saying SDRs are your friends in this case. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, they are. But you also
right.
need to work with the AEs because it's the AEs that's going to take it into close win.
Nice. All right. We're going to give it about 5 or 6 seconds to let you as attendees ask any questions that you have in the chat pane or in the Q&A. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap this party up for today. So again, we'll give it about a couple more seconds and then we will roll.
Thank you all.
All right, let's go ahead and do this. Thank you, Shira, for an amazing presentation. And thanks again to Zoom Info for sponsoring today's presentation. Remember to visit zoominfo.com/solutions/marketing and sign up for a demo. As a quick FYI, when you exit Zoom, there'll be a window that pops up with a very short 30-second survey. We'd love to hear what your thoughts on today's sessions are. Thank you for joining today. We'll see you again real soon on the next Marketing Profs webinar. Great job, Shira.
Thank you.